She was just a tired single mom on her first blind date in 5 years. One wrong table. One awkward hello. And the man she sat with? Not her date, but a billionaire she mistook for someone else. He said nothing. He listened. He laughed. And, from that moment, everything changed. What began as a mix-up would unravel into a journey of secrets, heartbreak, and a love that no one expected, but everyone needed to believe in. The rain was falling in long, cold sheets when Emma stepped out of the bus. She pulled her coat tighter around her chest, trying to protect the small bouquet in her hand from being completely ruined. Her heels tapped awkwardly on the pavement. As she hurried toward the restaurant entrance, her umbrella long since surrendered to the wind. Her hair was slightly damp, her makeup barely holding, and her heart thudded harder than it should have. Blind dates were not her thing. Not anymore. Not after 5 years of raising her son alone and working double shifts at the diner. But her best friend had begged her. "You deserve one evening to feel like a woman again," she had said. So here she was, cold, anxious, and already late. The restaurant loomed ahead, elegant, polished, and far fancier than she was used to. She hesitated for a moment outside the glass doors, looking at her reflection, nervous eyes, smudged mascara, a hopeful bouquet in trembling hands. She whispered under her breath, "You can do this," then stepped inside. Warmth and golden light wrapped around her instantly. Soft jazz played in the background. Every table seemed dressed in candlelight and quiet conversation. She spotted a man sitting alone at a small table in the corner, checking his watch. Dark blazer, sharp features. Composed. That had to be him. Emma took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and approached. "Hi," she said, smiling despite herself. "I am so sorry I am late. The bus broke down, and then I spilled juice on my shirt, so I had to change, and, well, long story short, here I am." The man looked up slowly. His expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. Calm. Curious. He closed the menu and gave her a small, amused smile. "I was wondering if you would show," he said. Emma exhaled, sliding into the chair across from him. "You probably think I am a walking disaster." "Not at all," he replied. "You are unexpected." She laughed, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Story of my life." Neither of them noticed the host walking toward a different table nearby, holding a small sign with the name Mark written in cursive, and leading another woman to a man who looked very confused. Emma had sat at the wrong table, and the man in front of her, Daniel, was not her date. He was the billionaire owner of the entire restaurant chain. But for now, he said nothing, because something about her honesty, her messy entrance, her smile, had caught him completely off guard. And, for the first time in months, he decided not to correct a mistake. Emma shifted slightly in her seat, trying to smooth the wrinkles out of her dress. It was not fancy, just clean and borrowed, but she wore it with quiet pride. She placed the small, slightly damp bouquet of supermarket flowers on the table, between them, and gave a nervous little laugh. "I know flowers are usually the guy's job, but I figured, why wait around? At least if this date goes terribly, I have something pretty to look at." Daniel studied her, still unsure how to respond. He had never been on a blind date, nor had he ever been mistaken for someone else. And yet, he did not feel the urge to correct her. There was something refreshing, disarming, about her. "They are beautiful," he said simply. Emma looked up in surprise. "Really? You were just saying that to be nice." "I do not lie about flowers," he replied, lips twitching. At the corners, she chuckled, leaning back in her chair. "You are smoother than I expected. I was warned you might be a little stiff." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Stiff? Yeah. You know. Type A, businessy. Lots of watch checking and no dessert." He smiled for real this time. "I suppose. I can be like that. On certain days." "Well, today is your lucky day," she said. "Because I am absolutely getting dessert." "Maybe two." Daniel nodded slowly. "Noted." They paused as the waiter approached. Emma glanced nervously at the menu, her eyes widening at the prices. Daniel noticed. "Order whatever you like," he said gently. Emma bit her lip. "Honestly, I am just trying to find the cheapest thing that won't make me look like I am trying to find the cheapest thing." Daniel leaned in slightly, voice warm. "Then let us just order what tastes good." That made her relax. She pointed at the pasta. "That. It sounds good and has enough syllables to sound fancy." After the waiter left, Emma folded her hands on the table and gave Daniel a searching look. "You are not what I expected," she said. "What did you expect?" She tilted her head. More awkward silences. More, "I do not know." Boring questions. "You are actually kind of real." "I take that as a compliment." "You should," she smiled. "I do not give them out often. My son says I have a truth-teller face." Daniel's interest sharpened. "You have a son?" Her expression shifted subtly, becoming more protective, almost cautious. "Yes, 7 years old. Smart as a whip and eats cereal like it is currency." Daniel nodded, sensing the shift. "You must be busy." "That is one word for it," she said. "I work 6 days a week, double shifts sometimes. I sleep standing up and can microwave dinner with my eyes closed." He smiled again. "Sounds like superpowers." "Please. If it were a superpower, I would be able to fold fitted sheets." They both laughed, and the sound filled the small space between them with something light and genuine. "So," she said after a beat, tapping the table, "what about you? What do you do?" Daniel hesitated. He could have said the truth, that he ran a company with over 1,000 employees, that his last date involved a yacht and a woman who spent half the evening talking about her Instagram metrics. But he did not. "I own a few restaurants," he said carefully. "Mostly behind-the-scenes stuff." Emma nodded, clearly impressed. "So you are the man who feeds the people who feed the people." "Nice. Something like that." The food arrived, and she lit up. "Okay, I am officially not mad about this. This looks incredible." She dug in enthusiastically, closing her eyes with the first bite. Daniel watched her, amazed at how unfiltered she was. No posturing, no performance, just presence. He found himself laughing more in 20 minutes with her than he had in the last 6 months. At one point, she asked about his family, and he simply said they were complicated. She did not pry. Instead, she told him about her son's obsession with dinosaurs, her neighbor's aggressive cat, and the fact that she once fixed her apartment's heater with a spoon. And YouTube, by the time dessert arrived, "Yes," she ordered. 2. They were both leaning closer, speaking softer, laughing easier. "I have not done this in years," she said, looking down at her plate. "It feels good. Like maybe I am not just surviving. Like maybe I am still me." Daniel's expression softened. "I am glad you came." She smiled. "Me too." And then, her phone buzzed. She picked it up, blinked, and went pale. "Oh no." "What is it?" he asked, concerned. I sat at the wrong table." She held up her screen, showing the name and table number from the blind date app. The correct table was 2 rows behind them. Daniel stayed silent, watching her process it. She looked at him, mouth open. "Wait, you are not Mark." He shook his head. She gasped, covering her face. "Oh my God. I am so sorry. I thought you were him." Daniel chuckled softly. "It is all right." "No, it is not. I basically kidnapped your evening and made you listen to my entire life story." I did not mind. She looked at him again, stunned, then burst out laughing. "I cannot believe I flirted with a complete stranger for over an hour." Daniel smiled. "Stranger? I thought we were dessert buddies." She grinned at that. "Well, Mr. Not Mark, thank you for not running away screaming." "Thank you for mistaking me," he replied. Emma stood up reluctantly, gathering her coat and bouquet. "I should probably find the actual Mark, though he is already going to lose points for not being you." Daniel stood as well. "Tell him I said good luck." As she walked away, Daniel watched her go with something unexpected tightening in his chest. She had come into his life by accident, but it no longer felt like a mistake. The next morning, Daniel was still thinking about her. Not in the vague way you remember a strange, pleasant evening, but in the sharp, exact way a song gets stuck in your mind, and every quiet moment sounds like her laugh, every silence echoes with her voice. Emma he had met thousands of people, colleagues, clients, admirers, pretenders, but none of them had looked at him the way she did, because she had no idea who he was. She had looked at him like he was just a man, and now he wanted to see her again, not as the billionaire CEO, but as the man who had laughed over dessert with her. The man she had accidentally chosen that he knew her first name, and from the restaurant's reservation system, it had not been hard to find the rest. The blind date app confirmed her last name when the table mix-up was reported. A few clicks later, he had her workplace. It was a small diner, tucked between a dry cleaner and a liquor store on the east side of the city. He walked in just before noon. The place smelled like bacon, burnt toast, and tired dreams. Vinyl booths, plastic menus, and a jukebox that had not worked since the previous decade. Behind the counter, wearing a faded green apron, stood Emma. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, her sleeves rolled up. She was balancing 3 plates and calling over her shoulder to the cook in fluent sarcasm. When she turned and saw him, her steps slowed. Her face changed, surprise, then confusion, then something unreadable. "Mark?" she said with a grin, walking over. "Oh wait, sorry. Wrong table." Daniel smiled, standing. "I figured I owed you a second dessert." She narrowed her eyes. "You found me." He nodded. "I wanted to." "Stalker vibes," she said, tilting her head. He laughed. "Or very determined admirer." She folded her arms, but her tone softened. "What are you doing here, really?" "Honestly," he said, "I missed our conversation." She hesitated. There was a beat of silence as background chatter filled the space between them. "You know this is not exactly the kind of place you usually hang out," she said slowly. "I do now," he answered. Emma looked him over, dress shirt tucked into slacks, clean shoes, expensive watch half hidden beneath his cuff. Everything about him screamed not from here. "I work double shifts. I smell like bacon grease. I have no time for makeup and no clue what truffle oil is. This," she gestured, "around, is my reality. And I liked being part of it," he said quietly. She blinked, caught off guard. Before she could answer, someone called from the back. "Emma, table 7's coffee is cold again." She sighed, turning briefly. "Coming." Then she looked back at him. "You want coffee?" "I would love some," he said. She poured it herself, hands steady but her mind clearly spinning. He watched her move with calm efficiency. How she smiled at an older couple without effort. How she gently tapped a child's shoulder to avoid a spilled milkshake. She was in her element here. Not glamorous. Not artificial. Just real. After her break, she slid into the booth across from him. "All right," she said. "You found me. What now?" Daniel leaned forward. "I want to keep talking to you." "Why?" "Because you are honest. Funny. Strong. You made me feel human again." Emma looked at him for a long moment. "Listen," she said. "I do not need saving. I do not need pity. I pay my bills, I raise my kid, and I eat leftover pancakes for dinner. I am not some fairy tale waiting for a prince." "I know," he said. "That is why I am here." Her eyes softened, but only for a second. "I do not do games," she added. "Neither do I." And yet, beneath her guarded expression, he could see it. The pull, the flicker of something curious and warm. Still, she stood. "I have to get back to work," she said. "If I get fired, no amount of dessert will fix it." He smiled. "Fair enough." As she walked away, Daniel sat back and sipped the bitter coffee he had found her, but whether or not he was allowed to stay, that was up to her. A week passed. Daniel returned to the diner 3 times, never overstaying, never prying. Sometimes he ordered just a coffee, sometimes pie. Once, he brought a small bouquet of white daisies and left them anonymously at the counter. Emma never asked him to leave. But she never asked him to stay either. There was something about her rhythm, how she moved between tables, how she joked with customers, how she always checked the clock right at 5 o'clock when the school bus would be dropping her son at the neighbor's. It was a rhythm Daniel had never seen before. Life at the speed of survival, but held together by love that he asked no questions. But he noticed everything. The tattered shoelace on her sneaker. The way she checked her phone 3 times during break, even when there were no notifications. The weariness she carried in her shoulders, but not in her voice. One rainy afternoon, Daniel overheard her on the phone near the staff hallway. Her voice was low, tight with tension. "Yeah, I know it is due. I am trying, okay? I will figure it out. Please do not call again during my shift." She hung up, face unreadable, and walked straight back to the register like nothing had happened. That night, Daniel called a friend. Not just any friend. A woman named Margaret who ran a nonprofit literacy program for working mothers. He made a donation under an alias and left a note requesting that a certain diner waitress's son be anonymously sponsored for a full year of after-school tutoring and childcare assistance. He asked for nothing in return. No names, no recognition, just help. Days later, Emma showed up to her shift blinking in disbelief. "I do not get it," she whispered to her coworker. They said some mystery donor covered all of Caleb's school support for the year. I mean, what kind of person just does that? Daniel sat in his usual booth, flipping through a menu he never actually read. Emma approached him a few minutes later with his coffee. You know, she said playfully, we have regulars who leave good tips, and then we have ones who sit like they are hiding a secret. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Which one am I? She leaned in, eyes squinting. Still figuring you out. He smirked. I am not in a hurry. That night, she laughed louder than usual. She made him try a lemon pie, she said, tastes like heartbreak, but in a good way. He told her about the first time he burned spaghetti at age 10 and never forgave the pan. They teased each other like old friends, danced around things they were not ready to say. And yet, despite the growing warmth between them, there was still a line she did not let him cross. Emma was used to people walking in and out, people offering help they could take back, promises with expiration dates to so she never asked if he was the donor, and Daniel never told her, because this was not about proving anything. It was about seeing her win, even if it meant watching from the back row. It was a Saturday morning when everything changed. Emma arrived at the diner a few minutes early, hair still damp from her rush shower, apron tucked under her arm. Her coworker Rachel was already there, eyes glued to the tiny wall-mounted television. In the corner, hey, Emma greeted, tying her apron. Busy yet? Rachel did not answer. Earth to Rachel? Still nothing. Emma turned toward the screen and froze. A local business report was running a spotlight segment. Daniel Carrington, the billionaire founder of Carrington Hospitality Group, has announced his company's newest initiative to support single working parents through partnerships with local nonprofits. Known for his low profile and hands-on leadership, Carrington continues to be one of the youngest and most private CEOs in the hospitality industry. The screen showed a recent video clip. There he was, Daniel, standing in front of a new restaurant location, speaking into microphones, dressed sharply. Behind him, his logo shimmered in gold. Carrington Hospitality. Emma stared in stunned silence. Her legs felt numb. Her face burned. It all began clicking into place. His clothes, his ease in fine restaurants, his calm confidence, the way he listened without ever oversharing. And that mysterious donor? Of course, she had told him everything. Her bills, her job, her fears. All while he sat across from her pretending to be just. Daniel. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone and searched his name. Endless headlines. Billionaire under 40 expands restaurant empire. Carrington's chain to enter global market. The quiet CEO behind the luxury experience. Quiet. Private. Calculated. That afternoon, Daniel returned to the diner. He slid into his usual booth, waiting. Emma did not bring coffee. She walked straight up to him, apron still on, face unreadable. You lied. Daniel looked up. He had expected this. I did not lie, he said gently. I just left some things out. She let out a short, humorless laugh. You let me talk about overdue rent while you probably made more money in your sleep. That is not fair. What is not fair, she snapped, is pretending to be one of us while living like one of them. You let me open up. You sat there, listening, nodding, like you understood. I do understand. No, she said firmly, eyes wet with fury. You do not. You never had to choose between rent and groceries. You never had to clean your kids' shoes with a toothbrush because you could not afford new ones. You watched me struggle while pretending you were just some nice guy who liked pie. I did not mean to hurt you. But you did. Silence stretched between them. Customers chatted nearby, unaware of the storm passing through the quiet booth in the back. I was not trying to manipulate you, Emma, he said quietly. I liked who I was when I was with you. Not the CEO, not the brand. Just me. Emma's jaw clenched. Then you should have introduced yourself that way. Daniel stood slowly. You are right. I should have. She turned away before he could say more. As he walked out the door, Emma leaned against the counter, trying to steady her breath. It was not the money that hurt. It was the fact that someone finally made her feel seen and turned out to be hiding the biggest part of who he was. The next few days passed like a blur. Emma worked her shifts, served coffee, took orders, smiled when required. But inside, everything had gone quiet. The kind of quiet that hurt. At night, when her son Caleb was asleep, she would sit on the floor of their small apartment and stare at the fridge covered in crayon drawings and overdue notices. She kept replaying that moment in the diner, his voice sang. I should have told you. But it was too late. She had let her guard down. She had trusted someone with her truth, only to find out he had kept his hidden the entire time. Then, just when she thought her heart could not take any more, life dealt another blow that on Thursday morning, her manager called her into the back room. I have to cut your hours, he said without apology. Corporate is tightening budgets. Weekend shifts are going to the newer hires. Sorry, but I rely on those hours, she said, barely keeping her voice steady. Talk to scheduling. That is all I can do. She nodded, numb.by Friday. Her bank account was nearing empty again. Caleb needed medication for his asthma flare-up, and the pharmacy copay was more than she had in her wallet. She stood at the counter, clutching a crumpled $20 bill, quietly arguing with the pharmacist. They said they would hold the medicine for one more day. That night, she brought home a bag of discounted groceries and made grilled cheese sandwiches for dinner. Caleb sat at the table, still cheerful as ever, wearing a paper crown he made in school. You okay, Mommy? He asked with wide, innocent eyes. She smiled, forcing it. Of course, baby. Just a little tired. She cleaned up quietly, then stepped into the hallway and slid down against the wall. She cried into her hands. Not the kind of crying that asks for help, but the kind that only surfaces when no one is watching. Emma had survived heartbreak before. She had survived being left to raise a child alone, living paycheck to paycheck. But this betrayal had scraped something deeper, because for a moment, she had allowed herself to believe she could have something beautiful, that someone saw her and still chose her, that a man like Daniel could want her, not in spite of her messy life, but because of the way she carried it. And now, she was more alone than ever. She turned her phone face down and ignored 3 unread messages from him. She did not need apologies. She needed peace. The next morning at work, the diner was quieter than usual. A light rain tapped against the windows, and Emma's uniform smelled faintly of syrup and dish soap. She was refilling a sugar jar when Rachel approached her, voice low. There is someone asking for you at the counter. Emma looked up. A woman in her 50s stood there with a pleasant smile and a gift bag in her hand. Are you Emma? She asked warmly. Yes? I run the after-school program your son attends. I just wanted to drop off this little thank you gift. Your son is a joy. His drawing won our kindness poster contest. She handed over the bag and left. Emma opened it slowly. Inside was a small canvas, painted by Caleb. It showed a smiling stick figure woman with tired eyes and a crown on her head. Beside her, a stick figure man holding a pie. And below it, written in careful block letters, thank you to the man who made my mommy smile. Emma stood frozen. She sat down in the booth nearest the window and stared at the drawing for a long time. She did not know how much more she could handle, but she did know one thing. Her son had seen something in Daniel that she had tried to bury. Under pain. Maybe Daniel had made mistakes, but he had also made her laugh, and somewhere deep inside, she missed that. It started with a crayon and a question. Mommy, Caleb asked one evening as he sat cross-legged on the kitchen floor with a handful of colored pencils. What is the name of the man who gave you the muffin and made you laugh so much? Emma looked up from the sink. What muffin? The one you brought home in the paper bag. It had that funny doodle on the napkin. You smiled all dinner. Remember? Emma's hands stilled under the water. She had not realized Caleb had noticed. Children always noticed. She turned off the faucet, dried her hands slowly, and knelt beside him. His name is Daniel, she said quietly. Caleb nodded and began drawing tea. Did not ask more questions, he just hummed to himself, tongue between his teeth, sketching what looked like a smiling man with spiky hair and a pie in one hand. 2 days later, Emma came home from work and found an envelope sitting on the kitchen table. It was sealed with tape and had 3 words scribbled across the front in green marker. To Mr. Daniel. She stared at it, heart pausing. Caleb? She called. He poked his head out of the bedroom, crayon marks still on his fingers. I made something for him, he said shyly. Because he made you happy. Emma's heart swelled and broke at the same time. She sat down on the couch, opened the envelope, and pulled out the drawing. There were 3 stick figures, one with long hair and a crown, one short one with a toy dinosaur, and one tall figure holding a muffin. All 3 were smiling. Below it, Caleb had written, thank you for making my mommy laugh. She does not do that a lot. Emma pressed the paper to her chest. Later that night, When Caleb fell asleep, she sat staring at the note for hours. She did not know if she was ready to see Daniel again. But she knew the message had to reach him. The next morning, on her way to work, she stopped at the Carrington Hospitality Group's main office building. She stood outside for 10 full minutes, holding the envelope in her hand, battling every instinct to turn around. But then she marched to the reception desk. "Hi," she said. "This is for Daniel Carrington. Please make sure he gets it." The woman behind the counter gave her a look, but took the envelope, and that was that. She did not leave her name. She did not leave a phone number, but inside, she left the truth. A child's truth. Simple, clear, without pride or pain. The truth that Daniel had made someone feel loved, even if only for a moment. That evening, Daniel returned to his office late after a board meeting that he was exhausted, drained, and still trying to convince himself he had done the right thing by staying away. Then his assistant handed him the envelope. No name, but it is addressed to you. Daniel opened it slowly, cautiously, and stopped breathing. The drawing hit him like a wave. Not just the stick figures, but the line. "She does not do that a lot." His throat tightened. He sat down, reading it again, running his fingers across the crayon strokes as if they held some kind of map. He had made her laugh, and even now, after everything, her son remembered that it was not a plea, it was permission. The next morning, he arrived at the diner. No suit, no car, no shield, just a man holding a muffin, and a heart full of hope. The bell above the diner door chimed softly. Emma looked up from behind the counter, wiping down a tray. She froze. There he was, Daniel, in no suit. No driver. No curated presence. Just jeans, a plain jacket, and something fragile in his eyes. In his hands, one paper bag, one folded drawing. Their eyes locked. For a moment, no one moved. The hum of the coffee machine, the soft clatter of forks and plates, all of it faded into the background. Emma slowly stepped forward. He offered her the bag without a word. She took it, unwrapping it with care. Inside was a muffin, blueberry, and a napkin with her son's crayon drawing, now laminated gently. On the other side, Daniel had written, "You are allowed to smile every day, not just once." Emma looked up. "I thought you were done with us," she whispered. "I never was," he said. "But I thought maybe you were done with me." She exhaled. "I was angry," she admitted. "Not just at you, at life. At the way it gives you something beautiful and then makes you afraid of losing it." Daniel stepped closer. "I never wanted you to feel small, or studied, or tested. I just wanted to be near the one person who did not care about who I was, but made me care more about who I wanted to be." Tears burned at the corners of her eyes, but she smiled through them. "You are still bad at speeches," she murmured. He grinned. "And you are still the queen of comebacks." At that moment, Caleb ran from the back, arms full of coloring books. "Mommy, mommy, he is back." Emma bent down beside her son. "Yes, sweetheart, he is." Caleb held up a new drawing. "This one has all three of us. And a dog. I hope that is okay." Daniel laughed. "I am more of a cat person, but I will adjust." They all laughed together. Easy, unguarded. Later that week, Daniel did not take Emma out to a fancy rooftop or a red carpet. Instead, they sat on a bench outside the diner, sharing fries from a paper tray. Watching Caleb race leaves along the sidewalk, Emma leaned against him, head on his shoulder. "You know," she said, "I think I finally sat at the right table." Daniel turned to her, eyes soft. "No, I think you brought the right table to me." And with that, they watched the sunset in quiet, content peace. No more lies, no more fears, just love. The kind that did not need to be perfect, just true. If this love story made you smile, or brought tears to your eyes, we would love to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We read every message, and your stories inspire us too. For more soul-stirring stories, emotional stories, and heartwarming stories like this one, do not forget to subscribe. Because sometimes, the wrong table leads to the right kind of love.